In this next story from Newsweek, Richard Spencer backs Joe Biden, says MAGA/alt-right moment is over. This is from August 24th, 2020. So obviously, if the far right has left the Republican Party, then it was the far right who coordinated the Capitol Hill riots online weeks before the event even happened, and Black Looter Mob riot organizer, Jaden X, was arrested, and this dude was like bragging about all the stuff that he was doing, and he got himself thrown in jail, and he's going to get convicted of it. But he was very specifically saying that he was chatting online with the far right to coordinate this riot. Richard Spencer definitely left the Republican Party. So if these people are coordinating to start a riot with Black Looter Mob, you can only have one conclusion then, that the Democrats started the Capitol Hill riots of 2020. And they already started one other Capitol Hill riot in 2017 after Donald Trump was inaugurated. They were burning down DC just about. There's all kinds of riot videos from that day. Like, they were going insane, saying that Trump's a Russian asset, that he mocked a disabled reporter, that he's working with the mob. There was all kinds of insane conspiracy theories going around. And then they're like knocking on QAnon. And they're saying, oh, that's far right. That means the Republicans are involved with them because Republicans are conservative. And then that means that they're right wing. And that means that they're more connected with the far right than the far left is. Which makes no sense. That doesn't actually make any sort of sense at all. First off, Democrats started the KKK. They were the ones that owned slaves, fought on the side of the South. And then I lost my train of thought. Democrats started the KKK. So yeah, it's like they think that just because the term far right has the word right in it, that necessarily logically connects Republicans to the far right. This isn't true in any way, shape, or form. Far right means left-right politics, where the farthest on the left of the political spectrum is anarchy. It's the flattest social hierarchy. Then you have anarcho-communism. Then you have communism. These are like the three most non-competitive and equality and equity-based systems that are theoretically possible. And so they're saying that, Nazis are far right, of course, and but they don't know what far right even means. They think it means anything that's like racist or xenophobic or nativist or any of the. They say on Wikipedia, they say anything that has any aspects of racism, xenophobia, homophobia. Like, they just basically list out like toxic masculinity. Basically, that's all far right. And then so they're trying to say that like the Nazis are like associated with conservative capitalists. But the problem with this, and they also say that Nazis were not socialists, which is insane because the name is National Socialism, and it's called that because the governments own the industries, right? Why else did they call it National Socialism, right? Oh, because it's a form of capitalism, right? Oh, right. Yeah, National Socialism is a form of capitalism. Of course not. No. Far right, the original term where you're talking about fascist was a populist movement where basically connected with socialism. They had different flavors of socialism. They were competing for what kind of socialist utopia Europe was going to be. And the National Socialists said, instead of having capitalism where their families will give them money and take care of them, instead we're going to have a competition. It's going to be us versus everybody else to see to win the place of the top country, because that to them they thought that was more fair, because fascists were liberals. You think they're like, oh no, they were authoritarians. That means that they weren't liberals, right? No, that doesn't actually have anything to do with history. They just made that up. Actually, no, they wanted authoritarianism because the capitalists wouldn't give them their way, and it was the only way that they could get what they wanted. They wanted to get rid of money. They wanted to have a world free of poverty, and they thought that there was certain things were holding them back, such as unclean genetics, such as certain groups of people in control of the money, aka the Jews at the time, and that they had to be as large as Russia, because Russia was massively huge and they were a massive military threat. And then the United States, which was massively huge, was not a military threat, was more of a potential ally. And then you had the capitalists, and they just viewed all of the capitalists as military threats. And because they wanted to make a more equal world, and so they thought that in order to make a more equal world, you had to kick out all the minorities, you had to get rid of all the unclean genes, and you had to do a land seize so that you can get as large as you could possibly be, so that the Russians won't come and mass slaughter people, which, doesn't justify any of their atrocities, but it does humanize it. It does show you that the history books they've misled you. You got a whitewashed version of it where the communists were the good people. And obviously that's because the people who were writing the communist books were influenced by the far leftist universities that were pushing this propaganda. And there is people, you heard about McCarthyism. You're like, oh yeah, McCarthyism was like these people being paranoid about the Red Scare, that there was a communist overthrow, right? Turns out Joseph McCarthy was actually spot on. There actually was a secret plot by the communists in Russia to overthrow the United States. And this whole critical race theory came from their propaganda effort, because they were trying to convince the minorities to join them. So they said the reason why you can't have this socialist utopia is because the white people won't share, or the white people won't share because they're racist. And so you need to have equity. They used the exact terms, equity, to describe this, because you were supposed to get an equal share. And equity is code word for communism, where everybody gets an equal share. And so it's basically a huge propaganda effort to disassociate the socialism from Nazism, because communism is a form of socialism, and they don't want to be associated with National Socialism because of all the bad press, because Hitler was anti-Semitic and killed the Jews. And then people think that Nazism is somehow worse than communism because they killed the Jews, but they don't take into account is that Jews were only 50% of the victims in the concentration camp. All of them were there because they were political dissidents. It wasn't because they were Jews. It was because they were political dissidents, or they thought that their genes were not pure. Not because their race, but because they were eugenicists. So there's a lot of stuff that people just got wrong. They never really examined into detail what was going on. So the Democrats are making all of these associations based upon very, very little data. They're saying, okay, so they're like, for instance, they say, there's black people are underpaid in the United States. For every dollar a white man makes, a black man makes 66 cents, right? So this means there's systemic racism, right? No. As it turns out, the average age of a white person is 56, and the average age of a black person is 23. They're about half our age. How much money do you think a 23-year-old is going to be making compared to a 56-year-old? The same? No. They're going to be making twice as much money because they're twice as old, and they would, if they were getting paid, they'd get paid over twice as much wages. It was a statistical anomaly that they said, but then here's another part of the thing that they left out. African Americans on average spend 71% less on education than white people do. Even the rich ones. They tend to buy flashy clothes, Air Jordans, fancy cars with really loud stereo systems. They go out to the club. They spend their money on trying to get some to hook up with people. And I'm getting better at getting rid of the cuss words. And so they're just not investing the money in the education, and then their GPAs, they have some of the lowest GPAs out of all of the races. I think they have the lowest GPAs out of every race of people in America. And GPA is closely associated to your income. Let's look at this chart. All right. I love this camera setup. If you're interested in buying a webcam, I don't have any affiliate links going on, but this is the Makose 4K webcam. I got it for $85. It's sweet. MOKOSE 4K USB 3.0 webcam. Really good. I'm going to have to say for $85, it's killer. So what do we got going on here? This is a diagram that I made of the Democrat 4-tier racial caste hierarchy. It's modeled after the 5-tier racial caste hierarchy, which is where you have the white man on top of the social hierarchy, followed by the white woman. Below her is the black man. Below him is the black woman, and below them is every other person that you want to put to oppress them in any order so that you can enforce the 5-tier racial caste hierarchy. So what the Democrats have done is they have turned it into a system where the ivory tower liberals are at the top. And they control everything. And so these are your elitists, your coastal elites, and your people who work in these big, huge skyscrapers, make a lot of money. And they control who ascends to the top of the ivory tower, which is a metaphor for an extremely racist power structure created by the white supremacist Democrats back when they owned slaves and started the KKK. And below the ivory tower liberals are the white feminists. And so a white feminist is a racist form of, white feminism is a racist form of feminism where they put white women's issues above everyone's else's. And so this harms everybody else because they're, the white women have that have the most money in America. People think that women are underpaid. It's not actually true. Women own 2/3 of the wealth in the United States. This is stats from Walmart. I think it's a purchasing power of women, right? Statistics on purchasing power of women. Women control pretty much 2/3. This thing says more than 60%, but the numbers have gone up. So it's easiest to say 2/3 because it's going there, because they're holding almost 2/3 of the college degrees coming out of college. And people are hiring, they're getting diversity tickets, and they're getting treated like men, forcing them to put off having a kid until their 30s so they could rise to the top of the ivory tower. And this causes them to have on average one child. And when they do that, it causes their family genetic line to die, because women have to have 2 kids to carry on their genetic line, because there's a man and a woman. And if you only have 1 kid, that means if everybody in your family had 1 kid, that means the size of your family would get cut in half in 1 generation. Each person is 1 chance of success. So your family's chance of success would be cut in half in 1 generation. If your family's doubled, if your family size doubled, then this would double your family's chance of success, because each person is 1 chance of success. So it's a toxic system where basically they need to replace their employees with someone. So they end up just supporting immigration so they could bring in minorities to replace the beta male and beta female populations that work in these ivory towers, who chopped off their penis and tied their tubes so that they could make a little bit more money at work. They just threw their family and their husband under a bus for a raise so they could be a slave in the office. And then whenever they got into their 30s, what they end up doing is they end up saying, you know what? I want a family. I've been slaving all day. I'm not trying to make more money, so I have to work harder. That's not the point of making more money. The point of making more money is so that you can have more time off and more freedom, right? So the entire ideology is self-defeating. It's a genetic suicide cult. So they got the underneath the white feminists. So the white feminists are above the hood Democrat. Hood Democrats are your low-income big city Democrats, the people who vote for blue no matter who up in the hood. That's why we call them hood Democrats, because Democrats started the KKK. KKK wore hoods. And at the bottom of the racial hierarchy, you have the poor whites / Antifa, your communist street kids. And the hood Democrats are above the poor whites because they get diversity tickets. And the white feminists are above the hood Democrats because they are feminists, and many people in the hood are misogynists and they treat women like sexual objects. But they never say anything about those people treating women like sexual objects. That's okay, because black people dominate pop culture in the United States. Supposedly they're an oppressed class of people, yet they dominate the media. And so the white feminists get more diversity tickets than the hood Democrats. And the poor whites and the Antifa, they don't get no diversity tickets because of their skin color and their gender, and because they started race riots and were trying to burn the businesses down, so nobody wants to hire them anymore. You'll see, I know this diagram's a riot. And so we can see, here's a chart of the average GPAs of the different races. And we could see the percentage of them who vote for Democrats. And you could see the lower their GPA is, the higher percentage of people they have voting for Democrats. And then you can see the household income of the races. And you can see that the income of the races nearly identically mirrors the GPAs, because it's a meritocracy, and the people with good GPAs coming out of the far leftist liberal universities, the ones who won't hire them for a job because their GPA isn't good enough, those are actually end up being the quote unquote white supremacists that are oppressing the minorities in the big Democrat-run cities. And it's not actually the quote-unquote racist Republicans in the poor rural states, the ones that freed the slaves and started the EPA. No, it's everything's backwards in Nazi land or authoritarian territory because they end up flipping all of the signs backwards, and all of the roads go the same place to however the dictator wants you to think. That's the way authoritarianism works. So here we can see a population height map of the United States according to who they voted for in the 2016 presidential election. If they voted for Hillary Clinton, they're going to be on this blue bar over here. If they voted for Republicans, they're going to be over here. And what you can see is that the vast majority of Democrats live in huge Democratic-run shithole big cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco and Seattle and Chicago and Miami and New York. And then everywhere else, people don't want those policies. See, but they think these people in these big cities think that they should control the entire country. These people think they need to control everybody in the red areas. And that's because they're these people. They're the Asians here at the top with the 3.2 average GPAs and the white people with the 3.09 average GPAs, which is why the poor whites are on the bottom of the four-tier racial caste hierarchy down here. That's why they ain't getting no diversity tickets, because the grades are suffering because of all the fentanyl that the Chinese Nazi Party has been smuggling in here with the cartels through the illegal immigrants to kill our people with chemical agents that they're distributing via the dark web, which is a form of cyber warfare that delivers chemical warfare agents in order to target the victims who are the people that they're trying to take out of power. That's the game that these Democrats have been playing. It's insanely dangerous. What else do we got? I think I covered that one pretty good. BLM and Antifa definitely are behind the race rioting. And the Capitol Hill riots of 2020 and 2017. All right, so that's it for this story. This is a live stream. The stream is not over. I'm just going to set up for the next story. So don't forget to smash that like button and ring that bell so you get the notifications for when I go live. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, go check us out on RSS Commentary out on YouTube. We're also on Periscope. The Twitter account's banned because I was criticizing Islam. But we're up on Facebook, soon to be on Rumble. I have not posted clips there, but I will be getting on top of that as soon as possible. So don't forget, if you got value out of this show, please consider sharing this video on social media. It is the best way that you could help us grow so that we could teach people about the evils of the Democratic Party and why you should walk away from the radical left, and you should either come to the center or to the right, but that is up to you. The Walkaway campaign is a non-partisan political campaign that is that non-partisan? It's a bipartisan political campaign. Yeah, so bipartisan means two, right? So hold on. Really, they're like mostly nonpartisan. They're partisan against Democrats, but, that's kind of confusing. So mostly nonpartisan. Better way to say it. Not whenever these people are saying, there's some people that say Walkaway's far right. These people are insane. You can't be listening to these people. They don't have any sort of credibility. They've proven to themselves to be crazy, violent, very hateful people who don't have your back. They want to take away your white privilege so that they could redistribute the wealth with equity to all the minorities so they can get the minorities to vote for them, because the average age of a white person is 56. So who needs their vote? They're just going to be dying off in the future. Let's just rob their money and give it to the minorities. Rob Peter so that Paul will vote for you.